Billionaire found his maid locked in basement. What she tell him shattered his soul. Adrian Sterling stood in the marble foyer of his Manhattan penthouse, loosening his silk tie with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. At 33, he'd built a tech empire that had made him a billionaire before 30, but tonight, success felt hollow. The conference in Boston had been draining, and he'd cut it short, arriving home 2 days early on this cold November evening. "Victoria," he called out, his voice echoing through the expansive living room. His fiancée should be here. Her car was in the garage, her purse on the console table. But the penthouse felt wrong somehow. Too quiet, too still. He walked through rooms that suddenly felt unfamiliar despite having lived here for 6 years. The fresh orchids that were always perfectly arranged in crystal vases were browning at the edges. Coffee cups sat unwashed in the sink. The throw pillows on the Italian leather sofa were askew. Small things, maybe, but they nagged at him. These were things Elena would never have let happen. Elena, his maid. The quiet, efficient woman with kind brown eyes who'd kept his household running seamlessly for the past 2 years. Now that he thought about it, he hadn't seen her in over a week, not since before he'd left for Boston. He'd assumed she was on the vacation Victoria had mentioned, but standing here in this subtly disheveled space, doubt crept in. He pulled out his phone and dialed Victoria. Straight to voicemail. He tried the housekeeping agency that had placed Elena with them. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, but we have no record of Ms. Reyes requesting time off or terminating her position. In fact, we've been trying to reach her for a wellness check. She's missed her last 2 check-ins." Adrian's jaw tightened. Something was very wrong. He moved through the penthouse with growing urgency, looking for clues, for anything out of place. In the kitchen, as he paced near the walk-in pantry, his foot caught on something, a slight irregularity in the hardwood floor that he'd never noticed before. Crouching down, he examined it more closely. Faint scratch marks surrounded what appeared to be a seam in the floor. His fingers found a small indentation, and when he pulled, a hidden trapdoor lifted, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. His blood ran cold. "What the hell?" he muttered, reaching for the light switch. A single bare bulb flickered to life, illuminating steep wooden stairs that led down to what he'd always assumed was just crawl space. He'd never had reason to investigate it in all his years here. "Hello." His voice bounced off unseen walls as he descended, his heart pounding with each step. The air grew colder and damper. At the bottom, he found himself in a small basement space, maybe 12 by 12 feet. And there, huddled in the corner on a thin, dirty mattress, was Elena. His breath caught in his throat. She looked nothing like the put-together woman who'd pressed his shirts and prepared his meals. Her dark hair hung in matted tangles around her face. Her uniform, the same black dress and white apron she'd worn over a week ago, was filthy and torn. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. But it was her eyes that destroyed him, wide, hollow, disbelieving, as if she couldn't trust that he was real. "Mr. Sterling?" Her voice was a hoarse rasp, barely above a whisper. "Elena." He started toward her, but she flinched backward, pressing herself against the damp concrete wall. He froze, hands raised. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm here now. What happened? Who did this to you?" She stared at him for what felt like an eternity, and then something broke inside her. The carefully maintained composure he'd always seen in her shattered like glass. Tears streamed down her hollow cheeks, and her body shook with violent sobs. Without thinking, Adrian closed the distance between them. Elena practically threw herself at him, her thin arms wrapping around his waist as she collapsed against his chest. She was all sharp angles now, her weight frighteningly light as he caught her. "I thought I was going to die here," she sobbed into his shirt. "I thought no one would ever find me. I thought. Sho, I've got you. You're safe now." He held her carefully, feeling the prominent ridges of her spine through the thin fabric of her dress. Rage unlike anything he'd ever felt burned through his veins, but he forced himself to stay calm for her sake. "Elena, I need you to tell me who did this. How long have you been down here?" 9 days, she whispered, her voice breaking on the words. It's been 9 days, Mr. Sterling. 9 days. 9 days without adequate food or water. 9 days in the cold and dark. 9 days while he'd been in business meetings and hotel rooms, completely oblivious to her suffering. Who? He asked, though dread was already settling in his stomach like lead. Who locked you down here? Elena pulled back just enough to look at him, and the fear in her eyes was mixed with something else. Guilt, as if she was the one who'd done something wrong. Miss Victoria, she said. Your fiancé. She locked me down here. The words hit him like a physical blow. Victoria. The woman he'd planned to marry in 4 months. The woman who smiled at charity galas and kissed him goodbye every morning. The woman he'd thought he knew. That's impossible, he said automatically, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't true. Things had been off with Victoria for months. Her jealousy, her paranoia, her increasingly erratic behavior. He'd made excuses, blamed work stress, convinced himself it would pass. Please believe me, Elena begged, her fingers clutching his shirt. Please, Mr. Sterling, I know she's your fiancé, I know you love her, but I swear to you, I swear on my mother's life, she did this. She said, her voice cracked. She said I was trying to steal you from her. She said she saw the way I looked at you, that I was plotting to seduce you. Mr. Sterling, I would never. I believe you, Adrian said firmly, cutting off her desperate explanations. He took in the bucket in the corner that served as a makeshift toilet, the single bottle of water that was empty, the untouched tray of food that looked to be days old and molding. The evidence was irrefutable. I believe every word you're saying. Elena, can you walk? We need to get you out of here, get you to a hospital. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled immediately. Malnutrition, dehydration, and 9 days of minimal movement had taken their toll. Adrian didn't hesitate. He simply lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, far less than any person should. As he carried her toward the stairs, she buried her face against his neck, still crying. I prayed someone would find me, she whispered. Every hour, every day. I prayed and prayed. I thought maybe a delivery person would hear me when I screamed, or that you would come home early. When I heard your footsteps upstairs, I thought I was hallucinating. I'm so sorry, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion as he carried her up the stairs and into the bright light of the kitchen. I'm so sorry I didn't figure it out sooner. I should have known something was wrong. I should have protected you. In the harsh fluorescent light, he could see the full extent of her ordeal. Bruises in the shape of fingerprints on her arms where she'd been grabbed. A cut on her forehead that had scabbed over. The unhealthy pallor of her skin. Her lips, so dry they were bleeding in multiple places. She looked like she'd been through war. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911 with one hand while keeping Elena secure with the other. As he gave the dispatcher their address and explained there was a medical emergency, Elena's hand came up to clutch his shirt like a lifeline. She said, I deserve this, Elena whispered, her voice distant, as if she were somewhere far away. She said I was nothing, that no one would miss me, that even you wouldn't notice I was gone. She said. The sound of the front door opening made them both freeze. High heels clicked on marble, and then Victoria's voice rang out, bright and cheerful. Adrian? Darling, I saw your car in the garage. What a wonderful surprise. You're home early. I've missed you so much. She appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped dead, her designer shopping bag slipping from her fingers. For one brief, unguarded moment, her beautiful face twisted into something ugly, pure hatred and rage directed at Elena. Then, like flipping a switch, her expression morphed into shock and concern. Oh my God. Adrian, what happened? Elena. I've been looking everywhere for you. Victoria rushed forward, her perfectly manicured hand reaching out. You poor thing. How did you get trapped down there? I had no idea that basement even existed. When did you? Stop. Adrian's voice was ice cold and sharp enough to cut. He stepped back, keeping Elena away from Victoria's reaching hands. Don't say another word. Don't even pretend. Victoria's green eyes widened. Adrian, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I said stop. He'd never used this tone with her before, never felt such contempt for another human being. Elena told me everything. You locked her in that basement for 9 days. You starved her, terrorized her, left her to die. That's insane. Victoria's voice rose, taking on a hysterical edge. She's lying. Adrian, you can't possibly believe her over me. She's been obsessed with you for months, I've told you that. She's probably done this to herself to get your attention, to make me look bad. Get out. Adrian's voice was deadly quiet now. Get out of my home right now, before I do something I regret. This is my home too. I'm your fiancé. Victoria's beautiful face contorted with genuine fury now, the mask slipping completely. You're going to throw me out for some hired help? For that pathetic little nobody who's been making eyes at you since day one? In his arms, Elena flinched and tried to make herself smaller. Adrian felt her trembling, felt her trying to disappear, and something inside him snapped. If you're not out that door in 30 seconds, I will physically remove you myself, he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. And if you ever come near Elena again, if you ever try to contact her or hurt her or even speak her name, I will dedicate every resource I have to making sure you pay for what you've done. The sirens outside were growing louder. Victoria's eyes darted to the windows, calculating. Then she grabbed her purse and ran, her heels clattering on marble as she fled. Adrian sank into a chair, still holding Elena close. She was shaking uncontrollably now, shock finally setting in. You believed me, she kept repeating. You believed me. Of course I believed you, he said softly, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Elena, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what she did to you, for not seeing what kind of person she really was. The paramedics arrived moments later, and Adrian had to force himself to let them take Elena from his arms. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, checking her vitals and starting in 4, she reached for him with desperate fingers. Don't leave me, she begged. Please don't leave me alone. I won't, he promised, gripping her hand. I'm coming with you. I'm not going anywhere. As the ambulance raced through the city streets toward the hospital, Adrian held Elena's hand and watched the machines monitor her fragile vital signs. The paramedics spoke in hushed, urgent tones about dehydration and malnutrition and possible organ damage. But Elena's eyes never left his face. Why? She whispered. Why did you believe me? You loved her. You were going to marry her. Adrian thought about that. About the woman he'd thought Victoria was versus the monster she'd actually been. About how blind he'd been, how his wealth and success had insulated him from seeing the truth. I believed you, he said quietly, because when I looked into your eyes, I saw the truth. And when I looked at Victoria, I saw the lie. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. A tear rolled down Elena's cheek. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for saving me. But as Adrian sat in that ambulance, holding the hand of this woman who'd been broken by someone he'd brought into her life, he wasn't sure he deserved thanks. He'd failed to protect her. He'd been so caught up in his own world that he hadn't noticed her suffering. That, he vowed silently as the hospital came into view, would never happen again. The harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency room burned Adrian's tired eyes, but he refused to look away from the door where they'd taken Elena 20 minutes ago. His hands were still shaking, from rage, from shock, from the sheer horror of what he'd discovered in his own home. A police officer approached him, notepad in hand. Detective James Morrison was in his 50s, with kind eyes that had probably seen too much. Mr. Sterling, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about what you found tonight. Adrian forced himself to focus, to walk the detective through everything, coming home early, finding the hidden door, discovering Elena in that nightmare basement. His voice remained steady until he described the state she was in, and then it cracked. She weighed nothing, he said, staring at his hands. When I picked her up, it was like lifting a child. 9 days, detective. 9 days she was down there, and I had no idea. Mr. Sterling, you couldn't have known. I should have known. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. There were signs with Victoria. Her jealousy, her paranoia. The way she talked about Elena, like she was a threat instead of an employee. I dismissed it as wedding stress, as insecurity. I made excuses for her behavior instead of seeing it for what it was. Detective Morrison wrote something in his notebook. Can you detail the specific behaviors you noticed from your fiancé? Adrian thought back over the past 6 months, seeing everything in a new, sickening light. Victoria became obsessed with my schedule. She'd call multiple times a day when I was at work, asking where I was, who I was with. She started going through my phone when she thought I was sleeping. About 3 months ago, she demanded I fire Elena and hire an older woman or a man. She said it was inappropriate to have an attractive young woman in our home. What was your response? I told her she was being ridiculous. Elena was excellent at her job, completely professional. There was no reason to fire her. Adrian's jaw tightened. Now I realize I signed Elena's death warrant with that conversation. If I'd just let her go, given her a generous severance, she'd be safe right now. If you'd done that, your fiancé would have just found another target for her jealousy, the detective said quietly. This wasn't about Ms. Reyes specifically. This was about control. Before Adrian could respond, a doctor emerged from the emergency room. Dr. Sarah Chen was young, perhaps in her early 30s, with exhaustion evident in her eyes, even though her voice remained professional. Mr. Sterling? You're here for Elena Reyes? Adrian shot to his feet. Is she okay? Can I see her? She's stable, which is remarkable given her condition. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and mild hypothermia. We're running tests to check for organ damage, but her kidneys appear to be functioning, which is our main concern with prolonged dehydration. Dr. Chen's expression softened. She's been asking for you. Normally, we'd limit visitors given her condition, but she became quite agitated when we said you couldn't come back. I think seeing you would actually help stabilize her emotionally. Take me to her. Please. The doctor led him through the emergency room to a curtained-off area. Adrian stepped through, and his heart clenched at the sight of Elena in the hospital bed. She looked even smaller in the white sheets, with fur lines running into her arms and monitors beeping softly. But her eyes were open, and when she saw him, relief washed over her face. Mr. Sterling, she breathed. You came back. I told you I wouldn't leave. He pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand carefully, mindful of the 4. How are you feeling? Like I'm dreaming, she admitted. I keep thinking I'll wake up and still be down there in the dark. Her fingers tightened around his. The doctor says I'll be okay. That my body will recover. And it will. I'll make sure you have the best care possible. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Why are you being so kind to me? I'm just your maid. I'm nobody important. Don't say that. Adrian's voice was fierce. Don't ever say that. You're a person, Elena. You deserve kindness and dignity and respect. What Victoria did to you is unforgivable, and the fact that it happened in my home, under my roof, makes me responsible. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have paid more attention. I should have seen what kind of person Victoria really was. He paused, struggling with his next words. Elena, you need to know, I've ended things with Victoria. I've called off the engagement. The police are looking for her now. Elena's eyes widened. But you love her. You were going to marry her. I love the person I thought she was. The person she pretended to be. But that person doesn't exist. Adrian shook his head. How could I love someone capable of such cruelty? How could I spend my life with someone who could lock another human being in a basement and leave them to suffer? She's going to hate me even more now, Elena whispered, fear evident in her voice. She'll blame me for ruining your relationship. She can't hurt you anymore. I won't let her. Adrian meant every word. Elena, I want you to know that you'll be taken care of. Medical bills, recovery time, whatever you need, it's all covered. And when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. What comes next? Elena looked confused. I assume I've lost my position. I understand, Mr. Sterling. After everything that's happened, having me around would just be an uncomfortable reminder. That's not. Adrian started, then stopped. He realized Elena had no idea what he was thinking, what he was feeling. To her, he was still just her employer, and she was still just the hired help. We'll talk about it when you're feeling better. For now, just focus on healing. A nurse came in to check Elena's vitals, and Adrian stepped out to give them privacy. In the hallway, he found Detective Morrison waiting with another officer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Mr. Sterling, this is Detective Sarah Rodriguez. She'll be the lead investigator on this case. Morrison gestured to his partner. We have some updates for you. We've issued a warrant for Victoria Ashford's arrest, Rodriguez said. Charges include kidnapping, false imprisonment, and assault. We've also frozen her bank accounts and put out alerts at all airports and border crossings. She won't get far. According to the medical team, Ms. Reyes was approximately 24 to 48 hours from potentially fatal dehydration and organ failure. If you hadn't found her when you did, she might not have survived another day. Rodriguez's expression was grim. Your fiancé left her to die, Mr. Sterling. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a calculated murder attempt. Adrian felt sick. He'd been in Boston, attending presentations and dinners, while Elena had been dying in his basement. Did you search the penthouse? We did. We found Ms. Ashford's journal in her closet. Morrison pulled out an evidence bag containing a leather-bound book. She documented everything: her growing obsession with you, her jealousy of Ms. Reyes, her plans to eliminate the threat. It's all here in her own handwriting. She planned this. Adrian's voice was hollow. For at least 6 weeks, according to the entries. She detailed how she would wait until you were away, how she would drug Ms. Reyes's morning coffee, how she would make sure no one would think to look for her. Rodriguez's voice softened slightly. Mr. Sterling, I need you to understand something. This wasn't your fault. Victoria Ashford is a dangerous, calculating individual. She's very good at hiding who she really is. I still should have seen it. Most people don't. That's how people like her operate. Rodriguez put the journal away. We'll need Ms. Reyes to give a formal statement when she's feeling up to it. In the meantime, we're building our case. With the physical evidence, the journal, and Ms. Reyes's testimony, the prosecution will have everything they need. After the detectives left, Adrian returned to Elena's room. She was dozing now, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been when he'd first found her. He settled back into his chair, determined to stay close. His phone buzzed with incoming messages. His assistant, his lawyer, his parents. Word was getting out about Victoria's arrest warrant, and everyone wanted answers. He ignored them all except for one, his mother. Adrian, I just heard. Are you all right? Is it true about Victoria? He stepped into the hallway to call her back. Mom, I can't talk long. But yes, it's true. His voice broke. She locked her housekeeper in the basement. For 9 days. I found her tonight, and if I'd come home even 1 day later, she might have died. His mother was silent for a long moment. Oh, Adrian. That poor girl. How is she? Alive. Traumatized. The doctors say she'll physically recover, but emotionally. He trailed off. Mom, I was going to marry Victoria. I was going to spend my life with someone capable of this. What does that say about my judgment? It says you're human, darling. Victoria fooled everyone, your father and I included. She was charming, polished, seemingly perfect. How could you have known what she was hiding? I should have known. Adrian leaned against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up with him. There were signs. Her jealousy, her mood swings. I didn't want to see them. What's the young woman's name? The one Victoria hurt. Elena. Elena Reyes. She's 27, originally from Colombia. She's been with us for 2 years, and I barely knew anything about her until today. Shame washed over him. She worked in my home, made my life easier every single day, and I never really saw her as a person, just as hired help. And now, his mother asked gently, now I can't stop seeing her. The terror in her eyes when I found her. The way she flinched when I first approached, like she expected me to hurt her too. The way she clung to me like I was the only solid thing in the world. He rubbed his face. I've been sitting in this hospital for hours, refusing to leave because she asked me to stay. What does that mean? It means you care about her, Adrian. There's nothing wrong with that. She works for me, Mom. Worked for me. The power dynamic alone makes anything beyond employer-employee relationship inappropriate. Then don't think about it as employer-employee. Think about it as one human being helping another heal from trauma. His mother paused. But Adrian, I have to ask, is it just guilt and responsibility you're feeling? Or is it something more? Adrian thought about that question as he said goodbye and returned to Elena's room. She was awake again, watching him with those large, luminous eyes that held depths he'd never noticed before. You don't have to stay, she said softly. It's late. You must be exhausted. I'm not leaving you alone. He settled back into his chair. Get some rest, Elena. I'll be right here. She studied him for a long moment. Can I ask you something, Mr. Sterling?
Adrian.
Please call me Adrian. Adrian, she repeated, and something about hearing his name from her lips did strange things to his chest. When you found me in the basement, why did you believe me right away? Most people would have believed their fiancé over their maid. He considered his answer carefully. Because I looked at Victoria, and for the first time, I really saw her. Not the mask she wore, but the truth underneath. And when I looked at you, I saw someone who'd been terrified and alone and fighting to survive. The truth was obvious, Elena. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I thought I was going to die down there. I thought no one cared enough to look for me. My mother in Colombia wouldn't have known what happened. I would have just disappeared. Adrian moved closer, carefully taking her hand again. You didn't disappear. You survived. And you're not alone anymore, Elena. I promise you that. She squeezed his hand, and they sat together in the quiet hospital room, two people whose lives had been irrevocably changed by a locked door and the cruelty that had put it there. Adrian didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would spend however long it took making sure Elena felt safe and valued again. It was the very least he could do. And possibly he was beginning to suspect it was what he. 2 weeks had passed since that terrible night, and Elena was finally being discharged from the hospital. Adrian had visited every single day, often twice, bringing books and flowers and meals from restaurants she mentioned liking. He'd learned more about her in those 2 weeks than he had in the entire 2 years she'd worked for him. He learned that she'd come to the United States at 17 with her mother, fleeing an abusive stepfather in Colombia. That her mother had gotten sick shortly after they arrived, racking up medical bills that had kept them in debt ever since. That Elena sent home half her salary every month to pay for her mother's ongoing treatment and to help support her younger sister's education. He learned that she loved classic movies and Colombian food and had dreams of one day going to college to study social work. That she read voraciously, often checking out 5 or 6 books at a time from the public library. That she spoke 3 languages fluently, Spanish, English, and Portuguese, and was teaching herself French from online videos. Most of all, he learned that beneath her quiet, professional demeanor was a woman of remarkable strength, intelligence, and warmth. The more he learned, the more ashamed he felt for never having noticed any of it before. Now, as he helped her into his car with the nurse's assistance, he could see she was nervous. She'd been protected in the hospital, surrounded by medical staff and security he'd hired to ensure Victoria couldn't get anywhere near her. But now she was being released into a world that suddenly felt dangerous. Where are we going? Elena asked as he pulled out of the hospital parking lot. She was dressed in new clothes he'd had his assistant buy, soft jeans and a sweater in a deep green that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. I've arranged an apartment for you, Adrian said. It's in a secure building with a doorman and cameras. Quiet neighborhood, close to parks and shops. I thought you'd want your own space while you recover. Elena was quiet for a moment. That's very generous, but Adrian, I can't afford. It's already paid for. 6 months up front, with the option to renew. He glanced at her. Elena, please don't argue about this. After what happened, after what you went through, because of my failure to see who Victoria really was, this is the absolute minimum I can do. It wasn't your failure, Elena said softly. You didn't know what she was capable of. I should have known. I should have protected you. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Victoria's still out there somewhere, and until she's caught, I need to know you're somewhere safe. They drove in silence for a few minutes before Elena spoke again. The detective called me this morning. They found evidence that Victoria was planning to leave the country. She'd bought tickets to Dubai under a false name, but she never made the flight. They think she's still in the area. Adrian's jaw clenched. The thought of Victoria still being out there, possibly planning to hurt Elena again, filled him with cold fury. She won't get near you. I've hired personal security. They'll be discreet, but they'll be watching the building. Adrian, that's too much. It's not enough, he interrupted. Elena, you almost died because I brought that woman into your life. Please, let me do this. Let me help keep you safe. The apartment was in a brownstone in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood, far from the penthouse where Elena's nightmare had begun. As Adrian helped her inside with her few belongings, mostly things he'd bought for her since she'd refused to return to the penthouse for her personal items, he watched her take in the space. It was furnished but not impersonal. His assistant had done well, creating a warm, welcoming environment with soft throws, plants, and artwork. The kitchen was stocked with groceries, including ingredients for Colombian dishes Elena had mentioned missing. This is beautiful, Elena whispered, running her hand over the back of the couch. It's like a real home. The comment broke something inside Adrian. You didn't feel at home at the penthouse? Elena looked at him, surprised by the question. I was an employee there, Adrian. It was never my home, it was my workplace. My actual home was a room barely bigger than a closet, and even that felt like luxury compared to what I'd had before. He'd never even seen her room, he realized with shame. In 2 years, he'd never once thought to ask if her accommodations were adequate, if she was comfortable, if she needed anything. He'd just assumed everything was fine because she never complained. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry I never. Stop apologizing, Elena said gently. Adrian, you've been incredibly kind to me. More kind than I ever expected or deserved. You saved my life. You believed me when anyone else would have doubted. You visited me every day, brought me things, arranged all this. She gestured around the apartment. You don't owe me anything more. What if I want to give you more? Not because I owe you, but because I want to. Elena met his eyes, and something passed between them. Something electric and dangerous, and full of possibilities neither of them was ready to name. She looked away first. I should rest. The doctor said I need to take it easy for at least another week. Of course. Adrian moved toward the door, then hesitated. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. Is that okay? You don't have to. I want to, if that's all right with you. Elena smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. I'd like that. Over the next few weeks, Adrian found himself spending more and more time at Elena's apartment. He'd bring lunch or dinner, and they'd eat together while talking about everything and nothing. She told him stories about growing up in Colombia, about her family, about the dreams she'd had to put on hold. He told her about the pressure of building his company, about his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, about the loneliness that came with success. He also learned about the nightmares that woke her screaming in the middle of the night, about her fear of enclosed spaces now, about the panic attacks that struck without warning. He held her through the worst of them, letting her cry against his shoulder, reminding her that she was safe, that he was there. I should see a therapist, Elena said one evening after a particularly bad episode. They were sitting on her couch, and she was curled against his side, exhausted from the panic attack. I can't keep falling apart like this. I've already arranged it, Adrian admitted. There's a trauma specialist who comes highly recommended. She has an opening next week, if you're interested. Elena pulled back to look at him. You arranged therapy for me? I should have asked first.
I'm sorry.
I want to help, and I don't always know how. Adrian. Elena's hand came up to cup his cheek, a gesture so tender it made his breath catch. You've helped more than you know. Just by being here. Just by making me feel like I matter. You do matter, he said fiercely. "Elena, you matter so much." They stared at each other, and Adrian felt the pull between them intensifying. It would be so easy to close the distance, to kiss her, to give in to the feelings that had been growing stronger every day. But he couldn't. The power imbalance was still there, the trauma too fresh, the potential for harm too great. He pulled back, clearing his throat. "I should go. It's getting late." Disappointment flickered across Elena's face before she masked it. "Of course. Thank you for dinner." In the car, Adrian rested his forehead against the steering wheel, trying to sort through his tangled emotions. His mother had been right weeks ago. What he felt for Elena went far beyond responsibility or guilt. He was falling for her, had maybe been falling since the moment he found her in that basement, and saw not just a victim, but a survivor. A fighter. A woman of remarkable courage and strength. But how could he act on those feelings without being another man taking advantage of her vulnerability? How could he be sure his feelings were real and not just some hero complex or guilt-driven attachment? His phone rang. Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Sterling, I have news. We've apprehended Victoria Ashford." Adrian sat up straight.
"Where?
When?" "She was trying to board a private flight to Brazil. We caught her at a small airfield in New Jersey about an hour ago. She's in custody now." Relief flooded through him. "Thank God. Has she said anything?" "She's claiming she did nothing wrong, that Ms. Reyes is lying, that you're being manipulated." The usual deflection. Rodriguez paused. "We found more journals at a storage unit she'd rented. Mr. Sterling, the obsession goes back almost to the beginning of your relationship. She's been planning this for a long time." Adrian thought about all the months he'd spent with Victoria, never seeing the darkness beneath her polished surface. "When's the arraignment?" "Tomorrow morning. We'll need Ms. Reyes to be there if she's up to it. I know it'll be difficult for her, but seeing her accuser face-to-face often helps in these cases." After hanging up, Adrian sat in his car debating whether to go back inside and tell Elena now or wait until morning. The decision was made for him when his phone buzzed with a text from her. "I can't sleep. Are you still nearby?" He was back at her door in under a minute. Elena answered in pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders, and Adrian had to remind himself to breathe. She looked beautiful and vulnerable and absolutely off-limits.
"They caught her," he said.
"Victoria. They arrested her an hour ago." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "She's really in custody?" She can't get out. She's going to be charged with multiple felonies. The bail will be astronomical if they even grant it." "Elena, it's over. She can't hurt you anymore." Instead of relief, tears flooded Elena's eyes. "I thought I'd feel happy," she sobbed. "I thought I'd feel safe. But I feel. Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her as she shook with the force of her emotions. "It's okay. Let it out. You're allowed to feel everything you're feeling." "I was so scared," she cried into his shirt. Every day, every night, waiting for the next attack. Wondering if she'd find a way to finish what she started. And now she's caught, and I should feel relieved, but I just feel empty. "It's shock," Adrian murmured, stroking her hair. "It's been weeks of constant fear and tension, and now that it's over, your body doesn't know how to process it." They stood like that for a long time, Elena crying out weeks of terror and trauma while Adrian held her steady. When she finally calmed, she didn't pull away. She stayed there, her head resting against his chest, her arms wrapped around his waist. "Adrian." Her voice was muffled against his shirt. "Yeah. I don't want to be alone tonight. Not tonight, when everything feels so big and scary." She pulled back to look at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes undid him. "Would you stay?" "Just to sleep. I need to know someone's here." Everything in Adrian's logical mind screamed that this was a bad idea, that the boundaries between them were already blurred enough, that spending the night, even innocently, would only make things more complicated. But looking at Elena's tear-stained face, at the fear and need in her eyes, he couldn't say no. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said. Relief washed over her features. "Thank you." She brought him blankets and a pillow, and after she'd retreated to her bedroom, Adrian lay on the couch staring at the ceiling. He could hear her moving around, settling into bed. After about 30 minutes, he heard soft crying. He was at her bedroom door before he consciously decided to move. "Elena?" "I'm sorry," came her choked voice from the darkness. "I'm trying to sleep, but I keep seeing the basement." The darkness. "I keep feeling like I'm back there. Can I come in?" "Yes." He entered her room, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. Elena was huddled under the covers, and even in the dim light, he could see she was shaking. Without overthinking it, Adrian climbed onto the bed on top of the covers and pulled her into his arms. She went willingly, curling against him like he was a shield against all the darkness in the world. "Tell me something good," she whispered. "Tell me about anything other than basements and fear." So he did. He told her about the foundation he was planning to start for domestic workers, providing legal assistance and protection. He told her about a new technology his company was developing to help disaster relief efforts. He told her about his secret passion for painting, which he'd abandoned years ago in the pursuit of success. "Why did you stop?" Elena asked, her voice growing sleepy. "Because it didn't make money. It didn't build my empire or increase my net worth. I convinced myself it was a waste of time." "That's sad," she murmured. "Life isn't just about building empires." "No," he agreed, holding her closer. "It's not." Elena fell asleep in his arms, her breathing evening out, her body finally relaxing. Adrian stayed awake for a long time, watching her sleep, and admitting to himself what he'd been fighting for weeks. He was in love with her. Completely, irrevocably in love. And he had no idea what to do about it. The courtroom was packed with reporters, advocates, and curious onlookers for Victoria Ashford's arraignment. Adrian sat in the front row, Elena beside him, their hands clasped tightly together. She was trembling despite her brave face, and he could feel the terror radiating from her. "We can leave," he whispered. "You don't have to see her." "Yes, I do," Elena said, her voice steady even though her hands shook. "I need to look at her and know that she can't hurt me anymore. I need to take back the power she stole from me." Adrian had never admired anyone more than he admired Elena in that moment. After everything she'd endured, she was still fighting, still refusing to let fear win. The bailiff announced Victoria's entrance, and the courtroom fell silent. Adrian felt Elena stiffen beside him as Victoria was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. Gone was the polished socialite who'd graced magazine covers and charity galas. Without her designer clothes and professional styling, Victoria looked ordinary.
Small.
Powerless. Her eyes swept the courtroom and landed on Elena. For just a moment, pure hatred flashed across Victoria's face, the same expression Adrian had seen that night in the kitchen. Then she forced a smile, playing the role of the wronged innocent. "Your Honor," Victoria's lawyer began, "my client maintains her complete innocence in this matter. Ms. Reyes's accusations are the product of an unstable mind seeking attention and financial gain. We ask that all charges be dismissed and my client be released immediately." "Your Honor," the prosecutor stood, a sharp woman named Margaret Chen who'd made her career prosecuting violence against vulnerable populations. "The evidence against Ms. Ashford is overwhelming. We have her personal journals documenting her obsessive jealousy and detailed plans to harm Ms. Reyes. We have physical evidence from the crime scene. We have medical records showing the severe trauma Ms. Reyes endured. And we have the testimony of multiple witnesses who observed Ms. Ashford's increasingly erratic and possessive behavior." The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, reviewed the documents before her. "This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, and attempted murder. Bail is set at $5 million. Victoria's facade cracked. $5 million? That's insane. "I'm not a flight risk. I have ties to the community. You were apprehended attempting to flee the country on a private plane," the judge said coolly. "You've demonstrated clear intent to evade justice. Bail stands at $5 million, and you'll be fitted with an electronic monitor should you manage to post it. Next hearing in 30 days. As Victoria was led away, She locked eyes with Elena one more time. "This isn't over," she mouthed, and Elena shrank back against Adrian. He put his arm around her, shielding her from Victoria's hatred. "It is over," he said firmly. "She's locked up, and she's going to stay that way." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them, shouting questions about the case, about Adrian's ended engagement, about his relationship with Elena. The security team Adrian had hired pushed through, creating a path to the waiting car. Once safely inside, Elena let out a shaky breath. "I thought I'd feel better after seeing her in handcuffs," she admitted. "But I just feel scared." The way she looked at me, "Adrian, she hates me so much." "She hates what you represent," Adrian corrected. "Her own insecurity, her inability to trust or be trusted." "You didn't do anything wrong, Elena. Her hatred isn't about you, it's about her." Elena nodded, but he could see the doubt in her eyes. Over the next few weeks, as they prepared for the trial, Adrian watched Elena wage an internal war with herself. On one hand, she was growing stronger every day, attending therapy, slowly venturing out into the world, even starting online college courses. On the other hand, she was haunted by guilt, as if Victoria's actions were somehow her fault. "I should have been more careful," Elena said one evening as they worked together in her kitchen, preparing dinner. This had become their routine. He'd come over after work, and they'd cook together, talking about their days. It felt domestic and comfortable, and absolutely right. "I should have seen how much she resented me." "And done what?" Adrian asked, chopping vegetables while she seasoned chicken. "Made yourself smaller? Become invisible?" "Elena, you did nothing to provoke Victoria's jealousy except exist. That's not your fault." "I knew she didn't like me. I saw how she looked at me sometimes when you weren't watching. Maybe if I'd quit, if I'd left voluntarily, then she would have found someone else to target. A secretary, a colleague, a server at a restaurant who smiled at me." He set down the knife and turned to face her. "Victoria's problem was never you. It was her own inability to trust, her need to control everything around her. You could have been a 60-year-old man named George, and she still would have found a reason to resent you." Elena smiled despite herself. A 60-year-old man named George? Who wore plaid and talked about his grandchildren constantly. She still would have convinced herself he was a threat. The joke broke the tension, and Elena laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made Adrian's heart soar. These moments were becoming more frequent, times when she could forget the trauma and just be happy. He lived for them. "Thank you," Elena said, moving closer to him. They were standing very near now, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "Thank you for always knowing what to say to make me feel better." "Elena," he started to step back, to maintain the distance he'd been carefully preserving for weeks, but she reached out and took his hand. "Don't pull away," she said softly.
"Please."
"I know you've been keeping your distance, being careful not to pressure me or take advantage. I appreciate that, Adrian. But I need you to know that I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break if you get closer. I don't want to confuse things. You're still healing, still processing everything that happened. The last thing you need is me complicating your recovery with feelings you might not even want." "What if I do want them?" Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "What if I've wanted them for weeks, but I've been too afraid to say so, because I thought you only saw me as a victim to be rescued?" Adrian's breath caught. "I've never seen you as just a victim. Elena, you're the strongest, bravest person I've ever met. When I found you in that basement, yes, you'd been broken down by what Victoria did. But you survived. You held on. And every day since, you've gotten back up and fought to reclaim your life. That's not weakness. That's incredible strength. Then why do you keep pulling away from me?" Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Every time we get close, every time there's a moment between us, you retreat. If it's because you don't feel the same way, please just tell me. I can handle rejection better than I can handle uncertainty." "Elena." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. "I'm pulling away because I'm terrified. I'm terrified of hurting you, of taking advantage of your vulnerability, of being another man who uses his power over you. I'm terrified that what I feel for you is so strong it scares me, and I'm terrified that I'll mess this up like I've messed up everything else. What do you feel for me? She asked, searching his eyes. Everything, he admitted. Elena, I'm in love with you. I think I have been since the night I found you, when you looked at me like I was a miracle even though I'd failed to protect you. Every day since, I fall more in love with your strength, your kindness, your intelligence, your courage. But I don't want to be the man who swoops in and takes advantage of a vulnerable woman. I want to be worthy of you. You saved my life, Elena said, her hands coming up to cover his. You believed me when no one else would have. You've stood beside me through the worst time of my life. You've never once made me feel less than or inferior or like I owed you anything. Adrian, you're already worthy of me. The question is whether I'm worthy of you. Don't even say that. Elena, you're... She kissed him, cutting off his words. It was soft and gentle and tasted like tears and hope. Adrian froze for just a moment before responding, pulling her closer, pouring weeks of pent-up emotion into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you too, Elena whispered against his lips. I know it's complicated and messy and probably too soon, but I love you. I think I started falling for you when you carried me out of that basement like I was something precious. Every moment since, every kindness, every time you made me feel seen and valued and important, I fell a little more. We should take this slow, Adrian said, even as he held her close, unwilling to let go. You're still healing. We should. Adrian. Elena pulled back to look at him seriously. I appreciate you wanting to protect me, but I know my own mind. I know my own heart. Yes, I'm still healing from what Victoria did. Yes, I still have nightmares and panic attacks and fears I'm working through. But none of that changes how I feel about you. If anything, going through all that has shown me how short life is and how precious it is to find someone who truly cares. I do care. So much that it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me, Elena said. Let's figure this out together. Slowly, carefully, but together. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. Together, he agreed. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened and evolved. They were careful with each other, building on a foundation of friendship and mutual respect. Adrian made sure Elena continued with her therapy, supported her as she enrolled full-time in college, celebrated with her when she aced her first exams. Elena, in turn, encouraged Adrian to restart his painting, setting up a small studio in the corner of her apartment. She pushed him to examine his relationship with work, to find balance, to remember that life was about more than quarterly earnings and market share. When's the last time you did something just for fun? She asked one Saturday morning as they lingered over breakfast. I'm having fun now, Adrian said, and he meant it. These quiet mornings with Elena, drinking coffee and reading the paper and just existing together, had become his favorite part of the week. I mean really fun. Spontaneous and silly, and just for the joy of it. He thought about it and realized he couldn't remember. Before I started the company, I guess. Maybe college. That's sad, Elena said, echoing what she'd said that night she fell asleep in his arms. Adrian Sterling, we're going to have an adventure today. An adventure? A surprise adventure. Go get dressed. Comfortable clothes. 2 hours later, they were at a pottery class in Brooklyn, covered in clay and laughing as Adrian's attempts at throwing a pot resulted in lopsided disasters. Elena wasn't much better, but she threw herself into it with enthusiasm, not caring about perfection. This is terrible, Adrian said, looking at his misshapen creation. It's beautiful, Elena corrected. It's perfectly imperfect. Like us. He looked at her, clay smudged on her cheek, hair coming loose from its ponytail, eyes bright with happiness, and fell even more deeply in love. Like us, he agreed. As Victoria's trial date approached, Adrian worried about how Elena would handle the stress of testifying. But she surprised him with her strength. She worked with the prosecutor, went over her testimony until she knew it by heart, and prepared herself mentally for facing Victoria again. I'm ready, she told him the night before the trial began. They were at his new brownstone. He'd bought it a month ago, and Elena had helped him decorate it, making it a real home instead of just another property. I'm ready to tell my story and make sure she faces justice. I'll be right there with you, Adrian promised. Every moment. I know. And that's why I can do this. Because I'm not alone anymore. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Elena testified with quiet dignity, never breaking down even when Victoria's defense attorney tried to shake her story. She remained calm, factual, and devastatingly credible. The journals, the physical evidence, and the medical testimony all supported her account. When the jury returned after only 5 hours of deliberation, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Victoria was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15. As the sentence was read, Victoria finally broke. She screamed at Elena, calling her vile names, accusing her of ruining her life. The bailiffs had to physically restrain her as she was led from the courtroom. Elena didn't flinch. She sat straight and strong, and when it was over, she turned to Adrian with tears streaming down her face. "It's really over," she whispered. "It's really over," he confirmed, pulling her into his arms. "You did it, Elena. You survived, you fought back, and you won." In the hallway outside the courtroom, Detective Rodriguez approached them. "Ms. Reyes, I wanted to tell you that your testimony was incredibly powerful. You helped put away a dangerous person. You should be proud." "Thank you," Elena said. "Thank you for believing me, for fighting for justice." As they left the courthouse, reporters again swarmed with questions, but this time Elena paused. "I want to say something," she told Adrian. He nodded, and together they faced the cameras. Elena took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Elena Reyes, and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse and kidnapping. I'm speaking today because I want other victims to know that you can survive. You can heal. You can find justice. If you're in danger, please reach out to the police, to hotlines, to anyone who can help. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be free. And to anyone suffering in silence the way I did, please know that you matter. Your life matters. You are worthy of protection and dignity and love." Her voice broke on the last word, but she held her head high. Adrian squeezed her hand, overwhelmed with pride and love for this incredible woman. That night, back at his brownstone, Elena was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked as they sat together on the couch. "I'm thinking about what comes next," she said. "The trial is over. Victoria is in prison. I'm enrolled in school. I'm healing with therapy. I have this amazing man who loves me." She turned to look at him. "I'm thinking that for the first time in years, maybe ever, I get to decide what my life looks like. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm living." "What do you want your life to look like?" Adrian asked. Elena smiled, that beautiful smile that made his heart race. "I want to finish college and go to grad school for social work. I want to help other survivors the way people help me. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want to build something meaningful and lasting and good." "That sounds perfect," Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." He pulled a small box from his pocket. He'd been carrying it for a week, waiting for the right moment. "I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months. But Elena, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're my home. You're my heart. You've made me a better man, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" Elena stared at the ring, a simple, elegant diamond that reflected the light like captured stars. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Adrian, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger. "I love you," he murmured. "I love you too. So much." As they held each other close, Adrian thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with horror and darkness, with cruelty and pain. But it had led to love, deep, true, and transformative. From that locked basement had come freedom. From trauma had come healing. From despair had come hope. And now, From suffering had come joy. 6 months after Victoria's sentencing, Adrian and Elena stood in the lobby of the Sterling Foundation for Workers' Rights, watching as the final touches were put on the signage. The foundation had been Elena's idea, a way to turn her trauma into purpose, to help others who found themselves in vulnerable situations. "It's perfect," Elena breathed, her hand instinctively going to the small bump that was just beginning to show beneath her flowing dress. They discovered she was pregnant 2 months ago, a surprise that had filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. "Are you sure you're up for the opening gala tomorrow?" Adrian asked, his hand covering hers protectively over their growing child. "We can postpone if you're not feeling well." "I'm fine," Elena assured him. "Morning sickness is mostly gone and I feel good. Besides, this is too important. There are so many people suffering in silence right now, and if this foundation can help even one person avoid what I went through, it'll be worth it." The foundation had been Adrian's gift to Elena for their wedding, which had been a small, intimate affair 3 months ago. They'd married in a courthouse with just their families present, Elena's mother, whom they'd helped bring to the U.S. permanently, and Adrian's parents, who'd embraced Elena as the daughter they'd always wanted. "My son needed someone to shake him out of his comfortable bubble," Adrian's mother had told Elena at the wedding reception. "You've made him see the world differently, made him care about more than just profit margins. You've given him purpose beyond building an empire." Now, that purpose was manifested in this foundation. They'd hired a team of lawyers to provide free legal services to domestic workers facing exploitation or abuse. They'd set up a hotline that was already receiving dozens of calls daily. They'd opened a shelter that could house 20 women and their children. And they were lobbying for legislation to protect workers' rights at the state and federal level. Elena had thrown herself into the work with passion, balancing it with her college coursework. She was now a sophomore, maintaining a perfect GPA while working part-time at the foundation. Adrian had never seen anyone with her drive and determination. Mrs. Sterling, called out Marcus, their foundation's director, a former prosecutor who'd worked on cases similar to Elena's. "The caterers need to know about dietary restrictions for tomorrow." "I'll be right there," Elena called back, then turned to Adrian. "Go home and rest. You've been working nonstop on this for weeks." "I could say the same to you," Adrian countered. "You're carrying our child and taking a full course load and running this foundation. When do you rest?" "I rest every night in your arms," Elena said. "That's all the rest I need." The gala was a tremendous success. Over 500 people attended, including politicians, celebrities, and most importantly, survivors who'd been helped by the foundation's services. Elena gave a speech that brought many to tears, sharing her story and the foundation's mission. "A year ago, I was locked in a basement, convinced I would die there," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Today, I stand before you as a survivor, a student, a wife, and soon-to-be mother. I stand here as proof that trauma doesn't have to define you, that you can heal and thrive and build something beautiful from the worst experiences." The Sterling Foundation exists to help others find that same path from darkness to light. Adrian watched from the side of the stage, his heart swelling with pride. This woman, this incredible, strong, compassionate woman, was his wife, the mother of his child, his partner in every sense of the word. After the speeches, they mingled with guests. Elena was approached by several women who quietly thanked her for speaking out, for making them feel less alone in their own experiences. Adrian watched her with each person, giving them her full attention, her empathy, her strength. "She's remarkable," said Congresswoman Patricia Martinez, who'd been instrumental in passing workers' rights legislation they'd advocated for. "You're a lucky man, Adrian." "I know," Adrian said. "Every single day, I know." Later that night, back at home, they'd moved into a larger brownstone with room for a nursery. Elena kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. "My feet are killing me. Remind me not to wear heels when I'm 4 months pregnant." Adrian knelt before her, gently massaging her swollen feet. "You were incredible tonight. Every person you spoke to left feeling heard and validated. You have a gift, Elena." "It's not a gift. It's just understanding. I know what it feels like to be invisible, to be voiceless." I never want anyone else to feel that way. She ran her fingers through his hair affectionately. We make a good team, you and I. The best team, Adrian agreed, kissing her ankle before standing and pulling her to her feet. Dance with me.
There's no music, Elena laughed.
Adrian pulled out his phone and queued up a slow song. Now there is. They swayed together in the living room, Elena's head resting on his chest, his hand splayed protectively over her stomach where their child grew. It was a perfect moment of peace and contentment. Have you thought about names? Elena asked. I was thinking if it's a girl, we could name her Hope. Esperanza in Spanish. Elena pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining with tears. That's perfect. And if it's a boy? I was thinking Victor. To remind us that we're victors, not victims. Victor Sterling. Elena tested the name. I like it. Strong but kind, like his father. Or Esperanza Sterling, Adrian said. Brave and compassionate, like her mother. They stood there together, imagining their future, their child, the life they were building from the ashes of trauma. Neither of them could have predicted this outcome a year ago. When Adrian had opened that basement door, he'd thought he was just saving a life. He hadn't known he was finding his soulmate. The next few months passed in a blur of preparation for the baby, for Elena's final exams before she'd take a semester off, for the foundation's expansion to 3 more cities. Elena's pregnancy progressed smoothly, though she refused to slow down despite Adrian's constant worry. I'm pregnant, not fragile, she'd remind him whenever he tried to get her to rest. Women have been doing this for millennia while also living full lives. But she did let him pamper her. Foot massages every night, breakfast in bed on weekends, running out at odd hours to satisfy her pregnancy cravings. He loved taking care of her, loved seeing the physical evidence of their love growing inside her. Elena's mother, Maria, had become a fixture in their lives. She'd moved into a nearby apartment and came over several times a week to cook traditional Colombian meals and share stories about Elena's childhood. Adrian's relationship with her was warm and easy, both of them bonded by their love for Elena. You saved my daughter's life, Maria told him one evening while they prepared dinner together, Elena resting on the couch. But more than that, you gave her back her spirit. When she first came to this country, she was so full of dreams. Then life got hard, and she forgot how to dream. You reminded her. She saved me too, Adrian said. I was so focused on success that I'd forgotten what really mattered. Elena showed me. One evening in early December, 7 months into her pregnancy, Elena came home from a doctor's appointment with a strange expression on her face. Adrian immediately went on high alert. What's wrong? Is the baby okay? Are you okay? We're both fine, Elena said slowly. But Adrian, I need to tell you something. His heart raced with anxiety. What is it? We're having twins. Adrian stared at her. Twins? As in, 2 babies. That would be the definition of twins, yes, Elena said, a smile starting to break through. They were hiding behind each other in all the previous ultrasounds, but today they both showed up clearly. A boy and a girl. A boy and a girl, Adrian repeated, then a huge grin spread across his face. We're having twins. We're having Victor and Esperanza. He picked Elena up and spun her around carefully, both of them laughing with joy and shock. Twins, he kept saying. We're having twins. Are you happy? Elena asked when he finally set her down. I know it's more than we planned. More expense, more work, more everything. Happy? Elena, I'm ecstatic. Terrified and overwhelmed, but ecstatic. He kissed her deeply. We're going to need a bigger nursery. They spend the next 2 months preparing for twins, transforming their spare room into a beautiful nursery with 2 cribs, 2 changing tables, and enough baby supplies to stock a small store. Elena's pregnancy became more difficult in the final months. She was carrying 2 babies after all, but she remained in good spirits. They're already tag-teaming me, she'd joke when both babies would kick at the same time. I'm not sure I'm ready for the teenage years. In late January, 2 weeks before her due date, Elena went into labor. It was fast and intense, and Adrian barely held it together as he drove her to the hospital. 18 hours later, Victor Adrian Sterling was born, followed 4 minutes later by his sister, Esperanza Maria Sterling. Adrian held his son for the first time and felt his entire world shift. This tiny, perfect human was his. Then they placed Esperanza in his other arm, and he was completely overwhelmed. 2 perfect babies. His and Elena's. "Look what we made," Elena said tiredly from the hospital bed, her face glowing despite her exhaustion. "We made miracles." "You made miracles," Adrian corrected, carefully placing the babies in her arms. "I just got to be present for it." The twins thrived, growing strong and healthy. Victor had his father's eyes and his mother's temperament, calm and observant. Esperanza had her mother's dark hair and her father's intensity, always alert, always demanding attention. Elena took to motherhood with the same dedication she brought to everything else. She nursed the twins, read to them constantly, sang to them in Spanish and English. Adrian watched her with awe, falling more in love with her every day. But motherhood was exhausting, especially with twins. There were nights when both babies would cry at once, when Elena was so tired she could barely stand, when Adrian felt completely out of his depth. In those moments, they held each other up, taking turns, sharing the load, being a team. "I don't know how single parents do it," Elena said one night at 3 a.m., nursing Esperanza while Adrian walked Victor around the room, trying to get him back to sleep. "Neither do I," Adrian admitted. "I'm barely surviving with 2 of us." But survive they did. More than survive, they thrived. 6 months after the twins were born, Elena returned to school part-time, and Adrian had restructured his company so he could work from home 3 days a week. They'd hired a nanny to help, but they remained hands-on parents, refusing to miss the precious early moments of their children's lives. The foundation continued to grow, now operating in 10 cities with plans to expand nationally. Elena had become a recognized advocate, speaking at conferences and working with legislators. She'd also started writing a book about her experience and recovery, hoping to help other survivors. "You've built an incredible life," Adrian told her one evening as they watched the twins sleep in their cribs. At 6 months old, they were starting to develop distinct personalities, and Adrian was fascinated by every change. "We've built an incredible life," Elena corrected. "This isn't just mine, Adrian. Everything we have, everything we've accomplished, we've done together." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too. Even at 3 a.m. when both babies are crying and I haven't slept in 3 days. They laughed together, the sound mixing with the soft breathing of their sleeping children. From trauma had come triumph. From darkness had come light. From suffering had come a love that had created new life. Standing there in the nursery of their home, with their children sleeping peacefully and their future stretching out before them bright and full of promise, Adrian felt a peace he'd never known before. He'd thought he'd saved Elena that night in the basement, but the truth was more complex and more beautiful. They'd saved each other. And together, they'd built something neither could have created alone: a family, a purpose, and a love that would last a lifetime.